Hi, this is Amy Coombe. A very pertinent question was asked by the gentleman in the blue hat. Sorry, I didn't catch your name. We hired a company to help maintain and run this facility that we pay a lot of money to. What was their role in deciding this?
In deciding this bid, do you mean?
Yeah,
The specific bid?
the operations of this facility.
Alex, as far as I know, they didn't involve it, did they?
Correct.
Can I ask why?
Kendall, did you answer?
She's a
A
manager.
little bit louder.
She's asking why First Service General Manager Alex Fambry wasn't involved in this bidding?
I think she got mine, she didn't get this gentleman's.
Oh, and I
So
asked-
the committee that sat and decided this, which thank you very much for serving on the committee, you decided that First Service's input was not required or needed.
No, we didn't decide anything. If she'd have wanted to get bid, she had a bid before, but they backed out.
And then you weren't involved in any
That's
further
not true.
requests of bidding or?
No, it was a board decision that they would handle it directly and with the committee.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Anyone else? Gonna be a short, open forum.
Go for it.
Beth Walter, 1948 Resort Street. Apparently there is a plan that's in the works once First Service is gone. Are we going to be informed of what this plan is so that none of us are blindsided by what's going to happen?
You'd have to have been able to ask Ms. Crawford and Mr. Crouch.
So Rebecca or yourself have not been involved in any of this planning?
No. I supplied some.
Well, Beth, I can tell you, I have seen and been emailed as a board member, some of what Mr. Crouch posted on Facebook in regard to a spreadsheet of money to be saved. I have seen that, but I have been asked not to share that information. I can say, and I will say, that I'm disturbed by it. I do not believe that it's complete or well thought out. And additionally, I can tell you that I have received some emails of some plans. They've been scattered emails, so I have not seen an entire plan in one email. And additionally, I would say that I do not believe that that plan is well thought out either. And like I said, the board was requesting that this information not be shared with the membership, which I disagree with. I think the membership should have the right to know that.
I agree. So you're saying there is a spreadsheet supposedly, but we're not allowed to see it even though it's, as far as I'm concerned, a public record that we should be able to see?
I agree with you on what Mr. Crouch said on social media. It was Facebook, is that he would be posting that on the hollybythesea.org website as soon as he got administrative abilities to that website.
Why not post it on our current website?
Well, yes, that would be an idea, and perhaps you should ask him about doing that. It's a very difficult position to be in, Beth. You know, I want to honor my responsibility as being a board member, but I'm also very concerned about what's going on.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd like to add that the spreadsheet that she's speaking of came this week. And I think Well, I looked at mine today, not in great detail, but I think it was just emailed this week. I think the original date was 12/30.
Who created this spreadsheet?
It came from Bill, so I'll say that more than likely it was Bill Crouch. And then, from what I read, I don't recall seeing anything in there about when they expect to share the information.
I'm Billy Neal for the lady that didn't recognize me up there.
A little bit louder, Billy.
I'm sorry. You hear me now?
Yes, I can, thanks.
Okay. I personally had a meeting with the External Vice President Bill Crouch here a little over a week ago to outline my concerns as a result of the action that the board took at the last meeting, which was not on the agenda. And I told him one of my biggest complaints was that they were not providing information to the members about what their plan was, or they were not providing any facts to justify that action, and requested that they do that. They need to provide information to the members. I told him too that I said I may be the first one that would support this action if it's justified, but just to come up and to do it based on individual personalities is very unprofessional, it's unwarranted, and it's not the right thing to do. He told me he would attempt to do that. I sent a request to all the board members today, and I hope you will verify that you did receive it. All 5 board members, specifically asking that tonight, I said it would be an excellent opportunity to provide some facts, some justification, some information to the board members on why they took the action, how are they coming up with $355,000 savings in the first year. I mean, it's beyond me, it's beyond treasurers that we've had on the board in the past, unless they do away with all of the employees and we end up having nothing but volunteers up here. I also asked to provide the plan ahead. We are less than 30 days to that termination date, and there's been nothing shared with the members on how this organization is supposed to operate in the future. It's totally irresponsible for what they are doing. I have reached out to Ryan Miller, and I'll share a letter with you that I shared with him. And I got in a little trouble this week because of an action that I took, something I wouldn't normally do, but I attempted to contact this individual via email on 2 different occasions, telephonically on 3 different occasions, and I dropped the letter off here for this individual as a board member to respond to me, a person that supported him to be elected to the board, and addressed my concerns, and not only my concerns, but those of many members of our community that I've talked to. And I basically said, Ryan, on 2 separate occasions I've attempted to contact you via email message, and additionally left 3 separate voicemail messages requesting you contact me to discuss your support of a couple recent decisions made by the Holly by the Sea Board. As an elected member of our community, you have an obligation and responsibility to the members to communicate with the membership on issues of concern. Often individuals elected to the position of the Holly by the Sea Board become overwhelmed with their responsibilities, especially if someone is working a full-time job during the day or just starting a new job in addition to the other responsibilities of family and community. As you recall, this was one of the reasons I asked the question concerning availability of time to perform the duties of a member of the Holly by the Sea Board during my telephone interview prior to the election. Being on the board can be a very time-consuming and require many additional hours in addition to those few hours spent attending monthly meetings. I would appreciate a phone call to hear your insight and thoughts on facts that influence your decision to support the decision to terminate the First Service residential contract. As you know, you were elected to represent the entire community. I'm extremely concerned that this decision may not be in the best interest of our community. Please take the time to communicate with one of your active supporters during the election process. I've heard nothing. That's not the way we are supposed to be treated by the board, the people that we elected to represent us. If he has other obligations, this is at least the 2nd time he's had to call in, and he was scheduled to call in a 3rd time. Board members are supposed to attend. The phone call-in is the exception to the rule, but it's become Very easy, because they don't have to address you, the members. I specifically asked the question for his position. I'm not even sure he's seen these contracts. And that's not right. That's not representing our membership. I have reached out to a number of people via my social media, several hundred, in an effort to sign a petition to get the issue of the termination of First Services, to get it rescinded, put on the agenda for the next board meeting. Florida statute says that if 20% of the voting interest petitions the board for an item, they have to add it to the agenda at the next scheduled meeting, or hold a special meeting within 60 days to address the issue. Holding the meeting or addressing the issue within 60 days will do no good, because the contract's supposed to be terminated, I believe, on the 1st of February. This board, and particularly the board president, I believe, is controlling the members' votes. Action that they are doing wasn't even shared with 2 of the board members, and that's not right. There is no doubt in my mind, none at all, that before they came here tonight, they already knew that they had 3 votes for Chris Phillips. Or not Chris Phillips, the Phillips from the water company. And he's an outstanding engineer, but the process is what bothers me, the process. The meeting that they had last month, there was nothing at all about a vote going to be taken to terminate that contract. All it said was a discussion. Florida statute and Robert's rules say that you have to put on the agenda whatever it is that you're going to do. If you're going to vote on something, you need to tell the members. Our current board, at least...
I can tell you, as secretary, I was requested to put on discussion, and I was willing to put on a discussion because I thought that the membership needed to know. And if any of the board members had a problem with First Service Residential, it needed to be discussed in the open, in the sunshine. The members needed to know. If there wasn't a problem, the members needed to know. The members needed to be able to respond in regard to what they believed was true and appropriate. I was completely blindsided by the vote.
I had a board member tell me that they had offered First Services that if they would replace the general manager, the one we have sitting right there, if they would replace her, that then they would negotiate the contract.
I never heard that.
Okay.
I never heard that as a board member from a board member. I did not hear that.
Jan, did you hear that?
I thought at that meeting that all that took place, and I questioned Bill Crouch when he was doing his external vice president presentation, whatever. Oh no, it was during the discussion on First Service. And I had brought up the point about I thought he wanted to negotiate. And I had asked him what had happened. I think he said something then, but I'm not
He did.
absolutely sure. Yeah, I think he said, just kind of like turned around and said that he wouldn't, I think he did say that at the meeting. I could be wrong, but I was a little bit stunned. But I don't know if you look back if you find it.
He did.
You remember?
I remember it. He looked over at Dan Buckner and said something about it.
Yeah. I think he actually did say it at the meeting.
Well, I asked Dan Buckner that specific question, and he told me no, it didn't happen. So, and I'm not calling anybody a liar. I'm just saying somebody is not telling the truth, though.
But
and regardless, that it's,
it's personal.
you know, we lived in the same place. We gotta work, we gotta come together and do a better job than what we're doing. We just continually beat ourselves to death with the boards that we have when they get in office. It's just that, I don't know.
I agree with you, Billy. I think what we're doing is tearing our community apart. And I personally have no problem with discussion and facts and presenting information membership. That's why I think board discussion is so important to be held in front of the membership, so the membership can respond and the board can make judgments. I'm not an engineer, as I said earlier. Some of these terms are new to me. And what am I going to try to do? I'm going to try to rely on information from members who have more experience than I have in that particular aspect, be it engineering or something else. And that's how I believe it should work. That's why the discussion is important.
Well, I'll sit down, I'd like to hear from some
No,
other people.
I just got one quick thing. Don't
I'm not
leave
in
that.
charge of this.
Me either. I was at that meeting, and as I recall, Bill said that he asked to negotiate with First Services, and he never heard anything back. Does anybody else remember that?
No,
Or am I thought?
no.
I remember when he was sitting right over there.
Got a quote? Yeah.
I hear a lot of people beating up on the board, but after reading First Services contract, and I won't answer this question, I'll let Alex over there answer it. At this particular time, based on your contract, could you tell us what the board is able to do without violating your contract?
I don't know what you're asking.
Well, I'm asking you, I mean, everybody here is wanting the board to put out information like start hiring people, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, the transition plan would not be a violation of the contract, if that's what you're
Can they
suggesting.
put out, an application for a CAM operator now without violating your contract?
That has nothing to do with our contract.
There's nothing in your contract that says that it's okay for them to go and do this.
What the board does has nothing to do with the first
There's nothing in the
service
contract about that.
So they could go and look for a leasing company to, if necessary, replace employees, and that will be okay too.
It has nothing to do with the first service contract.
Nothing. Well, I guess me and you read two different contracts, because I know you got some specifics in there where the board could be liable for doing certain things. I know you had a transition period when you came here, like 6 months, but I'm not understanding when I hear people say the board's not telling them what they're doing. And I think all the board members has tried to work together. I mean, it's very simple. We know we gotta have a CAM operator. We know we got to, have a management or a leasing company for EPLI insurance purposes and stuff. We gotta fill the gaps where, and at this particular time, I don't know if you have or you have not. Have you notified these employees of what their status is?
That is not a discussion item for an open forum.
Well, see, that's what I'm telling you. You got the board's hands tied.
No, those are two different things. This is an open forum of the members. We
So
can
you're not gonna
discuss
answer that.
personnel
But
items.
my question is, you know, you've got a lot of employees here that they don't know what their destiny is gonna be. They don't know if you're gonna take them all with you, or what's gonna happen, and this is the information that I've been getting
Let me
from the
respond.
board.
I think
Has anybody told
that's
you that,
a very
Jen?
good question for the transition team. I think the transition team needs to lay this out
Do we have a
for the
transition team?
membership
Not
and
official?
for the management company. And if it's not been laid out or clarified by the transition team, how the heck should First Services know how to respond?
Well, I guess you and Jan, Rebecca, you're here. I would be asking them,
And-
what can we
Who is
do or
them?
what we
And
can't do
can
to
I say
make this
something?
place work?
Can I say something?
Sure.
Okay, I I found out recently that at our next meeting, official board meeting on January 13th, we'll be voting for a human resource company, or firm, whatever you call it. So I think that kind of tells you that, you know, we can make some changes right now.
Well, I guess I was a little bit, I was listening to you and Rebecca, I was a little bit concerned that you guys are sitting there, but you are getting information from those folks
Eventually, yes.
on what you can and can't do.
I'm not sure which folks I'm speaking of. It's basically.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, Mr. Stevens, I find it very frustrating. It's a board of 5 people. The attorney has told us that all 5 people are equal in their vote, yet 3 people can make decisions, and there's very little discussion. And my experience on this particular board, and the only board, quite frankly, I have ever served on, is that information is not shared. And my personal opinion is that information is not shared with me because frequently I have been in opposition.
Well, if I was a board member and I had information like that, I would be coming to a meeting and specifying
Where's Bill?
you being left out on something, and I would do that. I hear what you're saying, but I'm not seeing anything at board meetings where you're saying you've been left out. And,
She did
are
say
they
it,
inviting
the last
you
meeting.
to
Did you go to
be
the
part
last
of
board
it?
meeting?
She did say it.
No, okay.
Okay.
Excuse me.
You know, Mr. Stevens, the only thing I can tell you is there are tapes of the meetings, and I believe there are duplicate tapes. I believe Ms. Sandy Kemp has tapes that she has used for Holly by the Sea News, and I believe also our general manager, Alex Fambry, has tapes of the meetings. So all of that information can be reviewed. I really don't want to dispute things. I'm just telling you what my own personal frustration is.
Well, I'm sorry that you're not being included. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
John Longden, 2914 PGA Boulevard. Apparently some people didn't go to the last meeting. It was very clear that the president came up with a proposal that was not on the agenda, that several members of the board didn't even know it was going to come up, and it was voted on and passed, despite the fact that there was really no discussion. There was a general tirade by the president, and that was the end of the discussion. So part of the problem here is not that First Services isn't passing on information. Part of the problem is the president of the association is not passing on information to members of her own board. That is the problem. You've got a person that has an agenda, you've got several people that agree with her agenda, and that's what happens. It gets forced through no matter what anybody else says or any discussion, or in most cases without any discussion at all. I have read First Services contract cover to cover, plus the 2 addendums that go with it, okay? There's nothing in there that says that the current board, being the board president, couldn't tell the members what's gonna happen. There is no legal background anywhere in that contract. And I've got it with me if somebody wants to dispute it. Thank you.
Good friends, I'm a retired minister, and one of my specialties was in conflict resolution. And
Good luck.
thanks, guys. You know, as I listen, I hear an old saying. It says, when elephants fight, the grass suffers. And it really does. And I think it's so important that all of us who are involved in this have some effort to participate. Mea culpa, I have not to this point, but I will from now on. I visited with a lady one time and said, "Where's your maid?" And she said, "Oh, I had to fire her. She was stealing all my Hampton Inn towels." I thought to myself, sometimes we don't see ourselves clearly. And I'll close with this. We do not see things as they are. We see things as we are. And I think for that reason, it is so important in this that we be participants in this process and that our voices be heard. Final thought is this: silence is golden, but sometimes it's yellow. And I think it's important that all of us, because I have great affirmation for this staff, and I appreciate this place very much. Thank you.
Rebecca, it's Amy again. I think one of my great frustrations is that we hired a management company. Unlike Rebecca, I have sat on many boards, and I'm gonna echo, I think, what Billy's frustration is. When you have a management company that is hired and paid to manage a facility, a board acts just like a board of a CEO, a corporation, anything else, acts as oversight. They're not the ones they're looking at what the proposals are from the management company and saying, okay, please explain to us why. I mean, if I didn't trust my managers when I ran boards, there's no way that these private individuals, I respect them all immensely for their service, but that they can be qualified to run a business like this. This is a business. And it just frustrates the heck out of me that we hired this company, good professionals with great backgrounds that we were supposed to put our trust in, and then boards, because they can't get it their way or they think they know better, then just push it away and say they don't need to be involved in anything. I just think it's a huge mistake, because we're gonna be right back where we were 10 years ago, whatever, with amateur management and the place just going to whatever superlative you want to throw in there. So that's it for me in closing. I just think getting rid of the service management is just a huge mistake.
I've just got one other thing to say before I close, and it's a quote from the board president at that meeting on the 2nd of December.
A little bit louder, Billy.
Quoting from the board president at the meeting on the 2nd of December. And I think that she believes this. She says that I believe the vast majority of the community agrees with this decision. However, when I asked the question to over 1,000 people, not one person, not one, indicated that they had been asked whether they supported it or that they didn't. Now, I know that Alex Crawford went around door to door during the election process, and she talked to some people. And there was probably some that said something along the lines that they didn't concur or didn't support First Services, and that's fine. I'm sure there's a number of people out there. But of all the properties that we've got, I find it hard to believe that the vast majority of the community supports the decision. Is there anybody here that supports that decision of termination? Okay, there's 2. Okay, 2 out of how many we have? 20 that's here. That's not the vast majority. It's not the vast majority.
Joe Campbell, 7146 Brinkley Street, and I agree with Billy. I'm not sure that they're doing what we need to do. but I agree with the process, disagree with the way the process came about. That we all should have known and put it out on the table, and I agree with it that way. But I don't agree that you should keep them.
Okay, okay.
I've been in Calabasas 18 months, Navarre for 10 years. And for 18 months, I've pretty much come and just sat in the back and done nothing. And I think a lot of the management company has, the last board I saw squandering, and I thought the general manager could have stopped some of that. So some of my reasoning is just based on that. Some of the things that I thought she could have put a stop to and helped the board go through and keep them from wallowing, and I just saw that, so that's all I got.
Appreciate your input.
My name is Laz Martin, 1950 Edgewood Drive. I've been in Holly by the Sea in different areas since a little after 96, I can't remember exactly the year, but this is my very first meeting that I've come to. And the reason was because I saw something in the paper that was very disturbing. I saw the president looking for a way to fire this company. And I called Alex, I actually called Alex Crawford, left a message, and the manager, what's your last name? Fambry called me instead, so somebody gave a message to the different Alex. I was trying to find out what's going on because it seems like there's a orchestrated plan to get rid of this company, and it's pretty evident if you're somewhat observant. The board, like I said, this is my very first meeting, and the board is very divided, and it seems like orchestrating moves, keeping certain people in the dark, making plans like Bill Crouch, I think is his name. He says, I selected a certain company. I think, Bill, you said something about it looks like there was pre-selection. Yes, there definitely was pre-selection, there's no question about it. I do engineering support. I'm an analyst at Duke Field, so I have a pretty good background on what's going on here. Mainly facilities, not as much stormwater, but I do have experience on this. And you have to have an objective, a set of objectives. What is the design company going to do? What are they required to do? From that, you come up with a statement of work. This is what we will do. That's the only way you can compare apples to apples. You can't just say, okay, we want to make the drainage work a little bit better. A company can take it one way, another company can take it another way. They can charge the same amount, but that doesn't guarantee that's what you're going to get is what you want. So be very cautious, be informed, and hopefully, I don't know if we can have a recall for the president, but something to think about.
You know, we could have a recall. The problem with the recall is it takes 8 months to a year. And I believe that's why Mr. Longdon is trying to get, or forced by membership sign up for the petition, to force on the agenda for January 13th a new vote so that we have opportunity to have discussion from the membership. The recall certainly is a possibility, but I believe from my research what Mr. Longdon is doing is the only other current alternative.
Does anybody else have something they'd like to say?
I'm Richard Hart. It's my understanding as long as 3 board members vote on something, that's the end of it. It doesn't matter how many meetings you have. The discussion requires no acknowledgement of that discussion. Hence, the people that are in the audience now have no true say as to what happens. So the people you elect are going to make the decision, and that's kind of what's happening. Any comments, Rebecca?
I would agree.
Okay, I guess the question is, moving forward, regardless of what happens with this, how do we fix that?
Well, I can tell you that I've talked to 2 attorneys that have homeowners association experience, and basically what I was told is the majority wins, and there's not a whole lot that I, as an opposing board member, can do. So that leaves us to getting enough names on the petition to force an item on the agenda, but that still does not guarantee that the motions will change if 3 people vote against it. They can't vote against putting the item on the agenda, but when it comes to a vote, they can still vote against it. So the only other alternative is a recall. And a recall in Holly by the Sea takes 2,500 plus a handful of votes. We did that once before, and it worked, but it also took close to a year to do it. And took a tremendous organizational effort.
Well, that isn't, in other words, that obviously isn't gonna work in this case or in any other, quite frankly, because I haven't seen more than, 800 votes on anything.
That's right, less than that.
Less than.
It's
And
less.
the other alternative that these attorneys discussed with me was swaying a board member. And as you heard Mr. Neal say earlier tonight, he had tried to reach out to Mr. Miller and was basically denied being able to reach out to him. I believe several members have spoken to Mr. Crouch, and basically it hasn't gone anywhere. So if there's no way to sway these 3 votes, Jan and I are hanging in the wind. And what that means to me as a board member, I can tell you 4 weeks ago, I was very concerned about being personally sued in regard to what this board is doing. I'm not so worried about that now, but I think the whole board is going to be held liable. And what could happen is membership could decide that they wanted to sue the board of directors, in which case I would be subpoenaed. I would have to go to court and testify. And I would be willing to do that. And that's scary business.
Rebecca, I would say that when I talked to Bill Crouch, he indicated I was the only member that had approached him about the vote. That there'd been no other member contacted him to try to find out what influenced his decision to vote for that.
Untrue.
That's not entirely true. I have knowledge that Sandy Camp contacted him.
Yeah, and this gentleman over here.
I did too.
Mr. Danner.
Either way, regardless of who's contacted them, as long as the 3 people vote in the particular direction, that's where it's going. The biggest problem that was mentioned here is the transition team. Is there one?
No.
Not official.
Yeah, not official.
Is it required to have one?
No.
So now you're down to the exact same problem you had before. The board is running their own thing, and
That's right.
The board is supposed to do that, don't get me wrong.
No.
It's a huge task. It is such a huge task to transition. You have got to have a plan.
I agree with that. I would consider it.
And that plan needs to be comprehensive. It needs to go over all aspects of Holly by the Sea, which would be all departments. So it would have to include maintenance, landscaping. It would have to include accounting. It would have to include ACC. It would have to include management. It would have to include opening and lockup. It would have to include front office and membership check-in. It would You can go on and on. It has to include the lifeguards, it has to include childcare. This is a huge deal.
Well, it's my understanding that the contract somehow limits.
That's just not true.
No, it doesn't.
It's not true.
That's not true.
Does not.
The board cannot interfere with management's day-to-day operation of what is currently going on, but that has nothing to do with transition, honestly. We haven't even been asked to help facilitate a transition.
All right, so on the 13th, that's what needs to be proposed. The rest of the stuff is wasting your time.
And then you have 2 weeks.
Right.
A little bit louder, please.
They basically said you have 2 weeks to get a transition team, but you have to, and maybe on the 13th, you have to get start the transition team, because it has to be
Officially.
voted.
They've already started unofficially.
Who's on it?
I couldn't tell you who's on it.
These three?
Bill Crouch and Alex Crawford.
I don't think Ryan Miller is, I don't think he's actively involved in anything.
No.
That's just a fair assessment. You know, he is working a full-time job, and he has other commitments that just, this is not at the top of his priorities.
What I'm trying to get at, that's not entirely possible. What I'm trying to get at is if this transition team doesn't happen, it would appear that the first services as it presently exists is going away on February 1. That being the case, as a community, we need to know what's going to happen, and that was certainly mentioned multiple times. It would have been nice if one of them could have remained.
They could have.
You gotta have the transition team. It's not, as they say, we don't know what's happening with the employees. The employees may not know what's happening.
I actually think this meeting tonight, that normally that they have what we're doing right now is they're still here. There's discussion going on.
And then
somebody's
they
listening to you. But they didn't want that. They wanted the meeting over so they could leave. All 3 of those board members are not involved in this at all.
Well, if you look at the agenda, that's what was supposed to happen.
No, the original agenda had the discussion, the open forum, and then we were gonna adjourn, but then they called and requested it to be flipped.
They wanted to adjourn.
They want to
and then have
adjourn
open
and
forum.
then have open forum.
Is that normal?
No.
That way it's
It was
not
just
on
changed
record.
today.
It's not normal, but it has occurred before in the past. And what I was told as secretary is that's how 3 board members wanted it, so I had to change it. The original agenda that I had posted as a draft was that the open forum would occur before
Adjournment.
the meeting was over. And I was told by the president that I had to change that.
Isn't there a meeting on December 10th?
There's
That's town hall.
Town hall meeting on January 10th.
January.
Town hall.
But what does that mean?
Nothing is gonna happen with it. There's
Just
no
like
voting, no nothing. It's just us talking back and forth.
Just like
Jan
Just
can
discussion.
describe the presentation.
Yeah, Rebecca and I are putting together a little slideshow to help get the discussion going. And we're going to talk pretty much, I guess mainly about what we see as the attributes of having first service, just to try and stimulate some conversation, give you some ideas of what we see as truly what the cost has or has not been with having a manager.
Okay, and is the other group, are they aware of this?
Well,
Yes.
I believe so. I believe so. I don't know that they're attending. They may surprise us and attend.
Well, they can't, you can't have more than 2, right?
Oh, that's right, that's right.
Yeah,
It's,
it'll be
it's a
another
noticed meeting. It's a noticed meeting.
At a town hall meeting, you can't. It's not a
Yeah,
board
they
meeting.
can all go.
But in the town hall, there's not going to be any vote that takes place. And the intention that Jan and I both had was that we might get enough membership attendance that it would be highly participatory, that the members would, in the slides that working on. We're hoping that at each slide, membership might ask questions, participate, offer their opinions. And I'm certainly willing to entertain opinions that are different than mine. You know, if somebody can dispute the information that we're providing, that's fine. I'm willing to listen to it.
I'm kind of like running a meeting, that's not supposed to happen. Okay, if you have that meeting, and let's say that the apparent majority is really concerned and wants to have further discussion, that's where you have to convince the three that have voted to remove first services. You have to get them to decide that maybe we should postpone this a month or something like that. Let me ask you, Alex, is there a possibility of delaying it 30 days?
It was actually suggested by the senior vice president that the board consider a 4-month transition because 60 days is just so brief, but the president denied that suggestion.
Shouldn't that be
And that
a,
was strictly in the benefit of the community for the management company to assist with a transition.
shouldn't that be a board decision and not a president's decision?
Well, I think it's the president of first service, right?
No,
No,
president.
board
This board president said she didn't wanna do it.
Ms. Crawford rejected it.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay, but
Without consulting with the other board.
unilaterally, all by yourself.
To me, that should be a board decision, not just one person's decision.
And when you say board decision, you mean at a duly notified meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
which could be the
In the
10th.
sunshine,
Yes.
which we haven't been having.
It's been very dark.
I think the biggest thing that you're missing here, and I don't know, anybody wants to come up there, certainly. The thing that you're missing here is that there is no communication. The minister said that people need to communicate. That's absolutely true. What's happening here is people say, I think I know what's best. And each of those are saying, I think I know what's best. You're saying, I know what's best, and it's different, but you're not talking to each other. And it's being kind of like you're not allowed to talk to each other. I don't understand.
Well, let me give you an example, and again, this is just personally from me. Board members are allowed to communicate by email, but they're not allowed to vote. So if a particular topic comes up, in other words, maybe an item that one of the board members would like on the agenda, I might